All right, guys, welcome. Mr. Kraus here. I'm going to give you a little introduction on how to take a look at your schedule on campus and then understand how that schedule is going to be followed during our school weeks for distance learning. Let's bounce over to the iPad here. A place to start is going to be to take a look at, you're going to go to harding.spps.org, and that'll bring us to this page here. You're going to tap the Student Parent Portal One Stop option up in the top corner there. And that'll bring you to this page. From here, we're going to scroll down and find the Campus Student button in the middle there. We'll go ahead and tap that button right there, and that brings you here. You might also use the Campus Student app. If you know how to do that, you're certainly welcome to do that. Otherwise, you're going to sign in here using S and your student number and your password that you use for Active Directory, Schoology login, and so on. Once you've logged into your campus account, you will be able to access your schedule by tapping the menu button, the little three lines at the top of the screen here, and from there that'll bring up this drop-down menu where you can tap schedule. And when you do that, you will then see your schedule, how it is listed and numbered in Campus. It'll look something like you see on the right side of the screen over here. In a second here, we're going to look at how that breaks down into your daily class schedule for distance learning. But an important thing to note right now is that you may notice some issues with your schedule. If you haven't checked this out yet, you might be missing some core classes, or maybe there's something on there that you didn't register for, some other problem. Later on in advisory, we'll talk about how to deal with those issues. But for the purpose of getting set up for distance learning schedule, just follow along with the classes that you have there. And then if you do end up making updates, just make sure that you make those changes later. So during a regular school year, if you're looking at your campus schedule as you see there, usually Harding would have 7 class periods in a day, or sometimes 8 when we have advisory days. And we number those periods 1 through 7, as you can see here on the right. The first 2 sections that are listed become your period 1, and the next 2 are period 2, and so on. And so usually during a regular school day, you'd follow your classes in that order. Sometimes we have block schedules if we're having finals day or other events that are happening. And usually we would do an even numbered day and an odd numbered day. If you scroll down on your campus schedule screen, the campus does have that schedule broken up for you. You can see it'll be called the even day block and the odd day block. And of course that refers to the period numbers, advisory being kind of like period 0, and then we have period 2, 4, 6 that occur on our even days, and we have periods 1, 3, 5, and 7 that occur on our odd days. It's important that you understand this because during distance learning, we're going to be using this block schedule model for scheduling the days and times that you're going to meet with your classes using Google Meet, which we'll talk about later. So it's important that you know how the even day and the odd day break apart. In order to avoid confusion between the numbers that are listed in Campus here, the 3, the 8, the 12, and so on, and the period numbers 2, 4, 6, to help everybody know what day is what, we're going to call the even days a maroon day, on which we'll have the even class periods will occur on a maroon day, and on gold days we'll have our odd periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. So you'll hear some days are maroon day, or today's going to be a gold day, and that'll tell you which classes are meeting on that day. So far so good. If you had any questions, now would be a good time to talk with your advisor, your classmates. Make sure you understand that some days are going to be maroon days. On those days you meet with your advisory, and then period 2, 4, and 6, and then some days are going to be gold days where you meet with period 1, 3, 5, and 7, and those are your odd days. All right, now let's take a look at what your maroon day and your gold day will look like. In order to do that, we're going to use the schedule that we pulled up from campus a few slides ago. The next slide here gives you some instructions to do that, and in a second I'll show you on the iPad how to find the files that we're looking for. Get them into Notability. Basically, we're going to go to your Schoology advisory course, find a file that's called My Schedule for DL, pull that guy into Notability, and then going back to your schedule, we will copy in to the My Schedule for DL file. We'll copy in which classes are meeting during the maroon day and during the gold day. If you're doing this with your advisory class, your teacher will give you some time to work on that and give you a time to be back. So for now, let's take a look at how you're going to do that on your iPad. So if we, when you get to your advisory course, it might look something like this. Your teacher's advisory course might look slightly different than mine, but somewhere in there you should find a week 1 folder. And I have mine set up that we have a separate folder for first day. And here we can find that schedule, the file My Schedule for DL. And if we tap that file, it'll open in Schoology. It's going to look something like this. In order to edit or add to the blocks that we have up here, we're going to have to pull into Notability. You see some information down here, and there's a second page. We're going to be getting into that in just a minute. But to complete this portion, what we're going to do is we'll click this export button up in the top corner here, and we'll go ahead and just tap on Notability, and that'll send it to Notability. From there, we should be able to open your Notability app and working on some chemistry there in the background. That's pretty good. Create a new note and ask to import that file, and go ahead and open that file up. So now later in the week, in the coming weeks, you'll be getting some tutorials on how to use Notability if you're not familiar with it. But up at the top bar, you have some editing tools. You can use either a text box and type whatever you want to in there. Otherwise, you could use the pen tool and write whatever you want to in there. What you're going to be writing in there, of course, is your class schedule. So at this point, what you would do is you'd go back to your the schedule that we pulled up here, the even and odd schedule, and take a minute to copy the courses that are going to meet on the maroon days. Of course, we already have advisory filled in there, but you'd fill in your period 2, 4, and 6 on the maroon day, and you'd fill in your period 1, 3, 5, and 7 on the gold day. So if at that point, like I said, your teacher will give you time to be back. Otherwise, if you're just watching this video on your own, you take a minute and pause and get that completed. Of course, if you're having any trouble with any of the steps up above, check in with your teacher and we'll get it sorted out. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what classes are maroon day classes and what classes are gold day classes, let's take a look and see how that fills into a regular week during distance learning. So what days and times are you expected to be online for class? Well, that's what we're using the maroon and the gold days to organize. So you can see that on Monday and Thursday are the days that your maroon classes would be meeting, and Tuesday and Friday are the days that your gold classes would be meeting. When do they meet? Well, over here on the left-hand side of the schedule, you can see the times. So for instance, if it was a Tuesday, your first hour class would be meeting from 9:30 to 10:05. This is the time that, during this time, these maroon and gold times that you see on the schedule, these are times that your teachers are planning that you're available and online to have either whole group lessons, to meet live with teachers, to work in small groups with your fellow classmates. And this would be, like showing up to your classes during a regular school setting. The bell would ring and you'd be walking into your first hour at this time and walking into your third hour at this time and your fifth hour at this time and so on. So throughout the week, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you should plan to be online from 9:30 in the morning to about 12:05, and those are the times that those live classes will be being held. What about the other parts of the schedule? Well, you notice that there's some times where it says explore independently, check on Schoology, maybe explore together, office hours. So during these other times of the day, this is where you're working on your asynchronous work, the work that teachers have assigned for you to work on your own, perhaps meeting with students during this time, other students during this time, checking out your teacher's office hours for you to check in with them independently. So those are the things that are happening during that time. And again, in the morning we have 8:30 to 9:25. That time is reserved to work on stuff for advisory. If there's not anything happening for advisory on that day, you're certainly welcome and able to do some explore independently work for other classes. And then in the afternoon time, that's when you're going to see a lot of your teacher office hours being held, and so on. Wednesday is a little bit different. Wednesday is a day where we don't have any synchronous or whole group sessions meeting. So Wednesday is a day where it's an explore independently throughout the day. There may be some office hours that are held. Perhaps you're part of a student group that will check in on these Wednesdays. And that information, of course, will be coming out to you as the year goes on. I'm sure you have some questions about attendance. That part's going to be checked in with you at a later part of this presentation here. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the week will look like. At this time, if you do have any questions, I'm sure there's a lot of them, it's a good time to check in with your advisory teacher, or if you're watching this on your own, maybe email your advisory teacher if you have any questions. On the last slide, we were looking at what a regular Monday through Friday week will look like during distance learning. The first week of school, from the 8th to the 11th year, it's going to be a little different than a regular week. Of course, on Tuesday, the first day, you're meeting just with your advisory classes and your advisory teachers. This week, the first week of school, Wednesday, will be a maroon day, so that'll be your first opportunity to meet with your even period, your maroon classes. And on Thursday, you'll be meeting with your gold classes. We have some explore independently time built in again here in the morning and in the afternoon. And Friday will also be a day that's explore independently and checking in with any teachers during office hours. So make sure that you understand tomorrow what classes are meeting. Well, on Wednesday, we're going to be meeting the maroon classes on Wednesday. Your schedule for Wednesday might look something like get up bright and early, get ready for the day, and then at 8:30, start checking in with your emails, check Schoology, email your teachers with any questions, start to get organized, and then at 9:30 on Wednesday, you'd start your maroon class schedule. And we'll talk a bit more about what that means in a second, but at 9:30 on Wednesday, you meet back with your advisory teacher, your advisory classes, and from there move on to period 2, 4, and 6. On Thursday, being a gold day, pretty similar, except that at 9:30, you will meet with your period 1 class for the first time. And again, we're going to talk about how to do that in the next section. All right, so hopefully you have an idea of how your maroon and gold days are split up on the schedule and when they are actually meeting during the week. Now let's take a look at what you're actually going to do to meet with those classes. So in order to do that, we're going to use the app Google Meet. Signing into your Google Meet meeting is sort of like walking into your classroom during a regular school year. Just like you have to find your classrooms around the building, you have to know how to get into your Google Meet meetings. The way we're going to be doing that is by having each of your classes having a unique Google Meet code or nickname. In order to access those, you're going to need to use the Google Meet app on your iPad. The icon looks something like this. Down in the lower right-hand corner of that screen, you'll see a meeting code button. And when you tap that meeting code button, it will give you the option to enter the code and then join the meeting. In a minute here, we'll talk about where you're going to find those codes. One thing that you should make a note of is that when you're entering a meeting, always have your microphone selected to the off option, so that as you're entering the room, as you're entering the virtual room, if there's conversations going on, you want to avoid any feedback or interruptions that might occur if your microphone is on. All right, let's talk about how to find the Google Meet codes for your different classes. In general, the Google Meet code will be in a format that looks something like your teacher's initials. If you have more than one teacher in a class, it might be some multiple initials, a short abbreviation of the course name, and then what period you're meeting. So, for example, my HL chemistry class that meets during period 7, the meeting code would look something like this: OK for Otto Kraus, Chem for chemistry, and then 7 for period 7. Your teachers should have a page in their Schoology courses where you can find the Google Meet codes for those classes. An example is right here of what that page looks like, and in just a second I'll show you on the iPad how to navigate there, what that might look like for you. But what you're going to be doing in a second here is looking up those codes for each of your classes, and we're going to return to the My Schedule for DL file that we were working on in Notability earlier, and for each of your classes you'll fill in the meeting code or the Google Meet code for that class, and that way you have one spot that you can go to know when you're meeting, what class is meeting, and what the Meet code is for that class. So it's kind of like knowing what your class schedule is, knowing what room of the building you're meeting in, and knowing when to go there. This is a good time, if you are doing this during advisory, to take a second and get this completed. And again, of course, if you're having any trouble with the steps, make sure you check in and don't be afraid to ask questions, as we're learning a lot of new stuff right here. So what I'd like to do right now is show you on the iPad what that looks like. So when you navigate on your iPad to a class for Schoology, it will look something like this. For instance, this is the home page for the IB HL chemistry class. It meets during period 7. When you tap the page there, it'll open up the schedule page, and your teacher should have a code here, what their class code is and when it meets. So for instance, my HL chemistry class, because it's an even class, is going to be, because it's an odd class, is going to be meeting on gold days from 11:30 to 12:05. And when students want to access that classroom, they're going to use this code OKChem7. So what you would do now is you would go to each of your classes on Schoology, find those Google Meet codes, and fill them in on the different days when your class meets. And again, that's so you have that all in one place, you know how to get around. Okay, so that ends the introduction to your distance learning weekly schedule. We took a look at your campus schedule and learned how that breaks it down into maroon days and gold days. We looked at what times of the day you're meeting with those classes and how to do that using Google Meet. I'm sure that you have some questions, so now is a great time to make sure you get those questions answered so that you're all set to start meeting with your classes. Remember that tomorrow, the 9th, is a maroon day. And remember that we are all in this together. So work hard. Hard work pays off. We got this. Go Knights.